Welcome back to the Painting Coach, and in this week's video I thought we'd do something completely different. So rather than paint one model, we're going to paint 10. Now you've heard me speak about one of my greatest inspirations, and that's Marco Frizzoni. He's recently done a video on how to paint the Gutrippaz from the Cruel Boys faction for Age of Sigmar. Now I thought, why not take some of his teachings and actually put them into action for a change rather than just watching his videos. So in this video we're going to paint 10 Gutrippaz using some techniques that I haven't really used before on the channel. Now that includes using my airbrush to prime the miniature. It also includes using oil paints to make washes. So I hope you watch along and I hope you enjoy. Now I'm not going to put the colours and the materials at the front of the video because there's just quite a few. So check the description and I'll have all the information in there. Also, if you want to support the channel, and you can do so using the links in my description, including the link for my Patreon, and you can also see some of my recommended equipment. Oh, and one last thing before we go. Marco usually gets his stuff done in about 4 hours, so I thought I'd get my kitchen timer and see how long it took me. Will it take me longer? Less? Who knows? Stay with me, we'll find out next. So we're going to start off priming the model using the airbrush, and the colour that we're going to use is going to be a reddy brown, and in fact it's called German Red Brown by Vallejo. And what we want to do is we want to get this onto the models in just short, sharp bursts using the airbrush. We don't want to swamp the model, just short, sharp bursts just to get it on there and get a nice covering all over it. And you can see I'm going to work through these fairly quickly, getting them all done and primed. Then we'll give it a couple of minutes just to set up and let the primer dry. Once that primer is dry, we want to give it a bit of a zenithal light, and what I'm going to do here is use some Liquitex White Ink, and I'm going to aim this from about 45 degrees to directly above. And again, I'm just using the trigger very gently to get the white ink onto the model. Now it's really important you do this, because if you just hold the trigger down or you put too much ink out of the airbrush at once, then you're going to flood the model, the ink will run, and you won't have very good coverage. So again, like I did with the primer, I'm just going to work my way through these very quickly. This is a really important stage because this is going to set us up really nicely for getting some nice transitions and some nice colours into the green and red on the models. Next up, I've switched to airbrush. I've switched to my Iwata, which is a little bit of a nicer airbrush with a bit more control over it. What I'm doing is I'm just using pure Blood Angels Red, and I'm shooting this directly onto the shields of the model. Now you can see my finger action is just very quickly down and back, down and back. And what that does is it controls short bursts of air and paint out of the model, so I've got a lot more control. And what you'll start to see now is that zenithal prime really starting to come out, because you'll see that on the bottom of the shield it's a bit darker than it is on the top. Now, once that Blood Angels Red is dry, now I've used a hairbrush to speed things up a little bit. Just take some masking putty and place this lightly over all the shields so that they're completely covered, to make sure that when you go to the green in the next step, you don't actually spill over onto that red you've already finished. So when it comes to the green, we're going to use the Orruk Flesh as a base, because I think this is a really nice green to base it with. So what I've done is I've just tipped some into a small pot and I've added some airbrush thinner. Now I just want to mix it up until I've got a really thin consistency, because the thinner the paint, the better it'll be, because the transparency will really bring that zenithal prime up. Now I'm just swirling it round, I'm just checking it against the side. It's not quite thin enough for what I want it to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably just going to add a little bit more thinner, a few more drops. Now this is one of those things that you just need to do it by eye, and a little bit of experience really does go a long way. So mix that up, and then once you're happy with it, you can pop it in the airbrush and we'll start shooting next. So when it comes to shooting the green out of the airbrush, I've lowered the pressure down to about 30 psi and getting quite close. And what I'm doing is I'm just shooting it against the flesh. Now it's really important to take your time. Try not to get it over bits you've already finished. Try just to get it on the parts of the flesh. Now it's nigh on impossible to do this with an airbrush. However, take your time, enjoy it, enjoy learning a new skill, enjoy the challenge, and then do your best, because ultimately nothing that we do in this step is going to be unfixable should it go completely wrong. The real key is, because you've got some really thin paint, is to just make sure you're using short bursts with the airbrush. Otherwise you're going to flood the model, you'll end up with spiders and too much paint. So we're making fairly good time. We've taken us an hour and 10 minutes roughly to do all of that airbrushing. So we're going to have a little look at some of the straps next. I'm going to use a load of contrast paint. So we're going to use all the kind of like brown contrast paint, so Darkoath Flesh, Gore-Grunta Fur, Wyldwood, maybe some Aggaros Dunes. I've got the snakebite leather pot open there as well, so we're going to dive into that and let's see how long all this contrast takes. So after all that airbrushing, we're looking pretty good, so let's jump in now and we're going to start using some contrast paints to really bring out the details. So the first thing I'm going to do is paint all the kind of leather bits with snakebite leather, and I'm just going to work this all the way around. Be careful around those bits you've already finished, goes without saying, because it's going to be really difficult to go in and fix those. Not too worried if I go over some of the lighter bits, because we're going to be doing most of this cloth in kind of darker colours anyway, which will work its way over the snakebite leather. But obviously when you've got straps and things on the arms, just be careful not to go over some of that green. So we'll do all the straps on all of them, and then we'll come back and see how we're going. So moving on to all the other kind of bits of cloth now, I'm just going to use different tones of contrast paint just to kind of give some different looks to these areas. So I've kind of got in terms of what I've got open, I've got Aggaros Dunes open, I've got Darkoath Flesh open, and I'm just painting them on into these kind of different areas. I've got Gore-Grunta Fur open as well, and I'm just popping these on all the way round just to give some really nice differentiated bits of clothing. So that's what a wet brush will do to you. Not particularly clever, so just be careful and don't worry about the kind of the coverage you can see here, because actually we're gonna make sure it gets a lot darker later on anyway. So just painting these on. I'm not going to the darkest colour yet, which is Wyldwood, so leave some of the cloth kind of in the lightest tone, because we will use that darkest colour to kind of finish off and draw these all together. Next up we're going to go in with Wyldwood, and we're going to do the majority of the rest of the clothing. We're also going to do all the wood, so all the kind of weapon hafts, shafts, etc. Going to get those done as well. So there's quite a bit to do in this now. Make sure you get into all those recesses, don't forget the bits sticking up there, and that'll give us a nice bit of differentiation. Don't do 100% of the remaining clothing in Wyldwood, because I think what we'll do is we'll bring some black into it as well, just to add that final different tone. So work your way around, get all that done, and then we'll come back to add the black. And then the last few bits we'll do with contrast paint are bits that maybe we've painted over with the red, such as these kind of tassely bits down there, and also on the inside of the shield, all the strappings and the handle basically for that. So work your way around to get it done. Apologies for the motorbikes outside. It is an absolutely scorching day, so everybody is out and about. Hopefully it doesn't ruin your enjoyment of this video. So get that done, we'll come back to the metallics. So with all the contrast done, we're at about 2 hours and 19 minutes into this. So let's have a little look at painting the silver. So the colour we're using for this is Iron Hand Steel. I'm just going to use a big brush for the kind of the big areas. I've thinned this with a little water, and it's possibly getting a little thin on the palette, so I might add some more, but just want to work it onto all those metallic bits. And I think the bit that's going to take time on this is you've got all the staples and stitches holding everything together, so that's what's going to take a little bit of time, but it'll be worth it in the end. So work your way around, get it all done, cover all the metallic parts, even if you think they may be gold or a different colour later. Paint them with this, and then we'll come back and pretty much done on the base colours, and then we'll have a look at using an oil wash. So I forgot to turn the timer off when I went for lunch, so it's probably about 20 minutes that I was away, but we'll work with that. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do an oil wash. So let's have a little look at the colours we're going to be using for the oil wash. So first off, I've got some Abteilung olive green, I've got some Abteilung blue green, and I've got some Winsor and Newton Burtn Umber and Ivory Black, because I want to make a dark brown. The Burnt Umber is a little light, so I might add just a little bit of black into it. So mixed a little bit of white spirit into the wash, into this green, and that's a little, for a wash, that's a little thick, so I probably need a little bit more white spirit in there, just to keep it as thin as I can. Just keep mixing that in there. So that's a bit better, I think. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to move across to get the shot set up for the minis, and we'll have a look at how we use this green as a wash. So using this oil wash, fairly simple, just painting it over all the kind of green skin of the models. Now normally I would say that I'm quite happy to leave this for a while to set up, but it's absolutely boiling today, which means that white spirit that I've used to thin the oil wash is going to evaporate quite quickly. So on the one hand, that's good because it means that the oil wash will in theory dry a little quicker, but it also means if I leave it too long I might have a little bit of difficulty getting some of the oil wash off. So I'm just going to carry on. I'm going to do this one, and I'm going to do all of the Cruel Boys with this wash, and then we'll come back and we'll take the green off. Cleaning off this is really easy. Just take a Q-tip or cotton bud, depending on what you call them where you are in the world, and just wipe off the excess of that wash, leaving it in the recesses, blending together some of those transitions. The next wash I want to make is kind of like a dark browny wash. I'm just putting a little bit of black in with the brown, and then I'm just going to thin it down with some white spirit. If you're going to do this, I recommend you get the low odour stuff. Just going to brush some of it in there because I put far too much in for the amount of oil paint I've got there. So bring some more of the oil colour in. So that's kind of my brown wash, which I'm going to use on all the clothes. So there we are. Hopefully that talks through a little bit about setting the oil wash up. So I'm going to set the camera back for the models. We'll have a look at how the greens turned out, it's looking really good, and then we'll apply this dark brown wash. So you can see that green wash has worked really well, and the reason I wanted to do that first is just to get it done out the way. Then, so the next thing we're going to do is going to cover everything else, everything apart from the skin, with this brown wash. So that's all the kind of the metallics, all the clothes, the belt, the shield as well. And what you'll see is that it's not quite thin enough to run off into all the recesses, but generally it'll give you some nice depth. And when we go in and clean it up like we did previously, you'll get a good effect. So get that done on all 10, and then we'll come back and so I'll take it off on cam so we can see what it looks like. So we're going to remove that brown wash exactly the same way as we removed the previous green wash. You can see it's getting some nice muddy effects on there. So fairly easy stage this, but one, just be diligent on as you work your way around. Take your time. So get them all done, and I think we've just got some last few bits, one wash of the bluey green on some of these metallic parts, and then we'll have a look at the time, and we'll have a look at where we're at, ready for highlights. So the last oil wash is with that kind of green blue or blue green. I'm just targeting some of the kind of the silver parts on the models, and if you're not sure which parts to target, then have a look at the box art, because it seems that all these kind of studs have a little bit of oxidation around them, which we're going to get with this blue green. So nice and easy, popping them on, and then you can clean your brush off. Take one of your cotton buds, and you could just tap away to take away the excess, and you leave that in there, and it'll blend in with the brown a little bit as well, so it gets nice and dirty. So you've got that. So do this on all of them, and then we'll have a look at the time, let them dry, and see how we go in. Okay, so the clock is at 3 hours and 47 minutes, which I still think I'm 20 minutes because I've got to turn off for lunch. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw some quick highlights down. Now normally you'd have to wait for the oil to dry, but because it's so hot and warm in my room here, the white spirit's kind of evaporated, so it's okay to kind of go in. So what I'm doing is I'm very roughly taking some Wild Rider red and using this to highlight the shields and just the raised areas. And this first one, it might be a little slippery if the oil's not quite ready, but that's fine. And of course, don't forget, we're working through all of them at once. We're not just doing them one at a time like we normally do. So get that done, and then we'll come back and we'll add another highlight just to make them pop a little bit. So this is very roughly going on here, very rough. It's not sharp, it's just fitting the aesthetic of just a little bit of light. The next highlight we're going to do is a fairly sharp one, using some Kislev Flesh just on those sharpest edges of the shields and the red. And the other thing we're going to look to do as well is the bottom lips, or the top lips of the mouth as well, just with that Kislev Flesh. Just breaking up the kind of the red. See, mine's drying out on my brush. And the other thing we want to do as well is where we've got some scars, we want to paint the top of the scars with the Kislev Flesh, just like that. And if you've got any elbow joints like that, we can just paint in there with them too. So there we are. Get that done on all of these guys, and then we'll come back with a little highlight to the skin. To highlight the flesh, we just want to take a little bit of Krieg Khaki, and again, we're working really, really quick here, so we're just looking for those kind of raised areas that are going to catch the light. If there's shape on the model, so if we can pull the brush down like that, then we will. Again, we're not being overly tidy because the green has already got quite a few tones in it, so we just want this to be the kind of absolute sharpest light. Nice and easy. So we want to do this on all of the models, so just shoot through them fairly quickly. There's lots of expressions on them. Next up, we want to just add some colour, so I'm just taking a little bit of Caribou Crimson, and I'm just using this around the lips. And the other place I'm going to use it is I'm going to run it either side of those scars, just like that, just to add in the kind of the scar tissue that goes with them. So get all of them done, and we'll do the teeth next. For the teeth, we just want to use a little bit of wraith bone on them. And you don't use too much at all. You just want to kind of dab into where the teeth are. Obviously, I've not picked the best mouth shape here because he's only got a couple of teeth showing. Because what we'll do is we'll be able to shade those teeth down once we've got them all done. So work your way through all of these chaps, get those teeth kind of just roughly based, and then we'll shade them down next. Shading the teeth nice and simple with some Aggaros Earth shade. And that'll just bring back some of the definition whilst also leaving the bone colour of the teeth in those recesses. So nice and easy, nice and simple. Don't throw too much in there because you don't want to pull too much. If you do it like that, and just clean your brush off, pop it back in, just like that. And I think the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to highlight some of the silver with some chrome from Vallejo Model A. What we're looking to do is we're looking to catch those sharp edges. So I'm just running the brush along those kind of raised sharp edges just to add a bit of interest to some of the silver metallics. Now, the other thing you'll notice is, again, I'm being very rough with this brush. I'm not rough with the brush, but rough with the highlights. I'm not, too concerned about having rough highlights on there because this metal is all battered and dinged and things. So I'm quite comfortable with it. I've also got a load of oil paint stuck in there, which I need to clean off. Just like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to have a little look at all the minis and get them kind of roughly highlighted with this chrome. And then I'm going to stop the clock, and I think we'll have a look at the minis, and then we'll go and I'll base them separately. So the final time check is in, and it's come out at 4 hours and 30 minutes and 24 seconds. Now, like I said, I think there was a 20-minute period where I had my lunch where I wasn't actually working, and actually I forgot to turn off the stopwatch, but that's by the by. I've turned up with 10 really cool models I really like the look of, and I'm going to do this on some of the other models in the squad as well. So I really hope you've enjoyed something completely different to what we normally do on the channel. When I look at that, it's taken me 4.5 hours, maybe an extra half hour to do the bases as well, where normally it would take me 4 or 5 hours to do the single figure just for the channel. So it's a real increase in speed. If you did like the video, please leave a like and a comment down below. It really does help me improve the content of the channel and make sure that I'm producing the kind of things that you want to see. If you would like to support me, you can do so using the links in the description. There's a link for my Patreon where, like I said, you get exclusive access to me, a monthly live frequently asked question, as well as some exclusive content. There's a link for Goblin Gaming where you can get up to 20% off all your wargaming needs, and there's my Amazon recommended equipment list as well. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.